I'm Dr. Paul Drouin with Dr. Goswami, and we are pursuing our journey in creative evolution. And more you elaborate about the subject, more I can see that Darwinism is not sufficient to answer all the question. It's like, a theory that that was laid out, and as it goes, you try to patch here and there, different problem that cannot be solved spontaneously by this approach.
It is very clear from the beginning, even from the conceptualization of Darwin himself. If Wallace did not challenge by publishing his theory first, Darwin probably would never have published his book. He panicked and published his book prematurely. Obviously, he himself did not like his theory very much.
Yeah, I remember I saw a movie about this. He was even doubting his own theory because there was a conflict between his religious belief too at the same time, right?
Yeah, that too. But his theory just did not hold water because he wanted to fit. He saw that purposiveness is necessary because it's clear that living beings perform purposive functions. It's very clear. Eye is there for seeing. Liver is for maintaining the body. You cannot take the purpose out of it. And biologists try to do that today by coining new words like teleonomy. It's apparent purpose, not teleology, which is real purpose. These are playing with games. And, whole subject of Darwinism, evolution theory is storytelling. Whose story is more convincing? Because they're trying to directly tell the story to the public. The fight is with religion. It's not a scientific fight at all. It's not fighting with other scientists. Other scientists, everybody has been shut up by saying that, look, we've got to pretend that Darwinism is the right theory because otherwise religions will get.
But there are major consequences, and one of in medicine is the determinist aspect of the Darwinism. It's like, we have a frozen view of evolution. And then when you look, at the power of the gene now, it's like, they determine everything, and you cannot get out of this box. You have to go in what you're explaining here, the creative evolution.
Well, that is because, see, Darwinism and genetic determinism, they support each other. Darwinism big defect, of course, is that the genes, you cannot prove that there is a one-to-one correspondence between genotype and phenotype, between the genes and what happens at the microscopic level. So what you do, you have another theory called genetic determinism. Genes determines everything. That supports that Darwinism. And how do genes determine everything? What is the support for genetic determinism? They bring Darwinism survival necessity to support genetic determinism. It's a total nonsense tautology.
Yeah, so you start on the wrong foot, and then more it goes, worse are the consequences, and they are huge now, because if you look at genetics, in the last decade, how this has evolved, and how we look at disease, like also coming out of this box of genetics, there will be a high cost to pay there, because if we are kind of caught here. But I like to also not comment, but try to go a little bit deeper in what you discussed during this last hour. One is the quantum uncertainty. It's I like you elaborate a bit more on this. It's like here, we have a drama, and as you said, maybe we have a small one, and then we require more type of situational creativity, and if we are in a really dead end, and then the survival of the species is threatened, then you have to be in a higher. But then there is, what will be the outcome is based on uncertainty. So I like you comment a little bit more about that.
Well, uncertainty reigns the world. In quantum physics, we did not first introduce the idea of uncertainty. We discovered the quantum mathematics first. And the mathematics clearly introduces probability. But then it became very clear, probability and possibility. And then it became very clear to Heisenberg, who discovered also, co-discoverer of quantum physics, that the basic aspect is that the determinism is wrong. Newtonian idea of determinism is wrong. Instead, the idea came that you can never determine because you can never find the initial conditions on an object. The initial velocity that you need to know and the initial position that you need to know in order to determine the trajectory of an object with time. That just cannot be done because you cannot simultaneously measure both position and velocity.
Yeah, you measure one, you lose the other, right?
The information of the other. So this fundamental uncertainty is the basis about which we cannot determine anymore, we can only determine possibilities. So quantum mathematics gives us possibilities, not certainties, not actualities. This is the basic idea of uncertainty. So gene mutations are possibility. Another way of saying it is that there is uncertainty in the movement. And those uncertainties like fluctuating initial conditions. Initial conditions could be this or that or that. There's a lot of selection. So depending on which initial conditions, you get a different chaotic form. And consciousness chooses among these various forms, and that's...
Okay, and then you came with the idea of a strange attractor. So where this one come from? Where come this magic idea or?
Yeah, the distinction will be very clear when I explain what a simple attractor is. You put a marble rolling in a glass, very soon you find that the marble comes to the bottom and rests. So we can say that this bottom of the glass is a simple attractor. It is attracting the marble to it, and the marble will be in equilibrium in that position. Whereas the complex attractor is the idea of a more complex order that takes place in a more complex system, open system. Like I mentioned Belousov-Zhabotinsky reaction before. If you look at the product of this reaction, you find an oscillating system called chemical oscillation. We can make a clock on the basis of this oscillating system. But this is a complex order. So how do we explain that? We say that, well, this happened because this system, under those initial conditions, were under the spell of a strange attractor, not the simple attractor that produces simple equilibrium, but a strange attractor that produces a much more complex order. This is the idea. Strange is just a name.
Could it be a link with this strange attractor and, let's say, sacred geometry? Some kind of, underlying template that would create a way to attract or reorganize things. Can we see that? Or?
Well, this is a complex issue. I mean, of course, if you can propose like Sheldrake that there are morphogenetic field templates with which you compare biological forms and choose, then you can also bring in ideas like, consciousness chooses from sacred geometry, predetermined forms, and this is what results in the chaotic forms. And in a sense, this is justified by René Thom, who gave a theory of these things. And also, chaos theory does produce many of the well-known figures of the living world. The problem is that mathematics comes from the human mind. It's not exactly archetypal.
What about fractal?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
We are closer to nature then.
And this is not quite the archetypal because it's mathematics. Mathematics is giving it. Mathematics is a representation of the archetype, not the archetype itself. It's a mental representation of the archetype. So you have to be a little bit careful. Mind can lie. So should we leave mental representation?
So mind can lie, but does mathematics lie?
Mathematics can lie, very much so. Very much so. All the determinism that scientists do, all the fun things that they do, that they lie on the basis of mathematics. No, it's a mathematical lie and therefore sounds very true because how can mathematics be wrong? Mathematics can be wrong because the initial assumptions determine the mathematics. That's how it can be wrong. So mathematics is a very funny beast and playing with it is a little bit dangerous because it's mind created. The laws are not mind created. The laws come from archetypes. They are more fundamental. So is sector geometry law-like, or is it creation of human mind in terms of mathematics? That's what you have to watch.
Yeah, but will you say the strange attractor is a mind kind of thing, idea?
Strange
Or?
attractor is it's hard to say, the way it comes in chaos theory is part of the mathematics. We're just naming it, part of the chaos mathematics. It's not part of the law.
Yeah, it's like, there is a set of possibilities. And when you are on uncertainty, it's like you have, unlimited possibilities, but at the end of the day, there is just a set of possibilities that things can be collapsing, right? This is what is a strange attractor?
Yeah, but then are they fundamental or are they man-made? This is the problem. And I would say that the possibilities collapse should be connected with more of the fundamental things of nature, like the archetypes, rather than trying to base them on what clearly has a human imprint on it.
Okay. Yeah, because you were speaking about trying to explain the strange attractor like a marble, going down the, it reminded me some theories that relate, to the structure to the universe, to the torus field. You probably know about
It's
that.
the same kind of idea.
This is the idea. The first, it starts with Einstein, where he could perceive, when you look at gravity, he was seeing this kind of curve in time. And then, from this, if we pursue this concept, we go a little bit deeper, then you have the torus field, and then saying is meaning that, this underlying consciousness has kind of not a shape or structure, but has like a blueprint or pattern of things can happen. This makes sense? Or?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But again, one has to be very careful. Einstein's version of curved space geometry responsible for gravity is a very accurate description of the gravity law. Therefore, we can say, well, this mathematics, whatever it tells us, is quite reliable because it's the best rendition of the gravity law, which is archetypal, and therefore the mathematics is reliable. Quantum mechanics itself is based on mathematics. Why do we rely so much on quantum mathematics? Because we say it's very close to the truth archetype. It is verified to this uncanny degree of accuracy. So you cannot do any better. Although it is man-made, although it is equations that a human conceived and so forth, it's just an approximate rendition of the truth, but still it's very, very close to, very, very close description of the truth. So if one can find sacred geometrical conclusions on the basis of laws which is very, very close to truth, then of course they are reliable. But of course, usually what people do is that they have some equations that they have chosen arbitrarily,
But let's say there's a little door open there.
Then it is very much, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Oh, okay. And then you spoke about this entropy, and if we there's nothing gain or loss. If you gain in entropy, in syntropy, you create more entropy. So how in quantum creativity or creative evolution we solve this problem?
No, this is what I was trying to say with the idea of the unconscious processing. In unconscious processing, there is no entropy production. So the problem of entropy production disappears.
Okay, so the little demon just go away.
The demon answered the question of how life is maintained, but demon does not answer the question of how life evolves. Why should evolution occur? This is the fundamental question of entropy that creationists raise. Creationists are, of course, religious people and their theories are prejudiced. I agree with that. But they have raised some challenged biologists and raised some very beautiful questions. This entropy question has never been resolved. Entropy arises in maintenance of life, okay, that's good. Open system, life is maintained, entropy increases elsewhere, very clear. But in evolution, where does the entropy increase when a species evolves to another species? Where? I mean, you just
So yeah,
cannot
the
find an
quantum
answer.
processing resolved that.
But unconscious processing resolves it because there is no trial and error. You do not have this trial and error stuff that Darwinism implies. Gradual accumulation of every time you accumulate and produce more order, where is the entropy that is increasing in that process? This question does not arise because you are not doing any trial and error. Everything accumulates in potentiality and then consciousness chooses. Entropy is never the question.
So another term you use during the presentation is consciousness is opportunist. He can play. In other words, universe can play with us. It's like you can come with a species or feature in the creation that it's hard to understand what is there, but it can be like a blink of an eye, or you know you understand what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
it's a little bit opportunity.
And some said that it's like the whole thing is a play. That you think these two ideas connect together?
It is a creative play on the basis of some preconceived notions. See how creativity works. You have been creative yourself. We start with some sort of vague idea. We intuit something. But we are also very clear that when the insight comes, it will surprise us. It's not going to be as we thought it would be, right? So consciousness, in that sense, consciousness is a player. Yes, there is some preconceived notions, these templates that you call morphogenetic fields, preconceived forms. But that may not be possible to represent in the world. Yeah. So consciousness got to take advantage of what is available, contingency. And this is why we find imperfection in species. Species is not perfect because the consciousness could not find a perfect matching of those perfect forms.
And then you can arrive even with imperfection at the end.
Yes,
It's
you can
rare
even
because
arrive
this is what people said. Why God does this and done this is because finally, at the end products most of the time, has a purpose or finality, but sometimes not.
Well, so sometimes you just could not find it, could not find the matching. And then what do? You still have to be creative and you still have to solve the problem that is arising, and the problem is huge. There is a catastrophe and we have to get out of this by creating new solutions. And then you take the best you could. And that's how imperfection can enter.
And now I'd like to come back to this idea of where is going evolution, and you touched this in the other discussion yesterday or other presentation. It's like we are going all the time for more and more complexity, more and more representation, and so meaning that we don't have the frame time, but if we look back, where we start from a cell and now we are human being thinking, and so it means that this evolution will guide us sooner or later to something else. There's like a finality there. Will you see that? Or when you're speaking about representing the supramental, and it's like it's an insight, right? It's like it's like you have an insight where everything is heading, right? Can we say that?
Yes, we can.
And sooner or later, this may or will happen. And maybe not the way we are thinking, but something may happen.
That's the thing. We have to be prepared about the eventualities, outcomes of creativity. It will never be as we can predict.
Expect, yeah.
Well, yes, the heaven will come to earth, but not necessarily in the expected way. What we picture of heaven being, this perfection, the way we picture it, it may not be that kind of perfection the way we picture it. It may be a very different beast. That we have to be prepared for. The reality is always going to surprise us, the manifest reality, because it's a creative manifestation. Creativity is aha experience. It always surprises. The manifestation will not be according to preconceived templates. And this we have to come to terms with, because we have a tremendous habit of expecting and then that only acts as limitations on creativity. It doesn't really help creativity.
I think I will end with this word because there's kind of a hope if we look back of what has surprised us, in the past, we will be, kindly surprised, what's will happen in the future.
I think a very good way of living is to accept the surprise for what it is, and let life be a continuous bunch of surprises. The fact that we can expect a little, that should keep us satisfied. That gives us impetus for striving for what we expect.
Thank you, Dr. Goswami.
You're welcome.
Find out more and enroll in a degree program today at quantumuniversity.com.